Hello everyone and welcome to this recording on Azure Active Directory to Sophos Central Identity Sync using Azure AD Domain Services. So in this recording, I'll be showing you a temporary option that you can use to synchronize your Azure AD identities to Sophos Central if you're operating an all cloud environment. And this is very important to emphasize because if you have an on-premises or infrastructure as a service Active Directory structure, that's the preferred option for synchronizing your identities. But if you're an organization that you're operating an all cloud environment, this gives you an option to be able to adopt Sophos Central and synchronize your identities to it. So I'll get right into this because of time. Here's the setup of what we're going to be deploying today. As you can see, there will be Azure Active Directory using Azure AD Domain Services, and we will be synchronizing your identities from there to Sophos Central. So prerequisites that you need an Azure Active Directory tenant. It's preferred if you have your custom domain already set up for Azure AD, but that's something that's optional. It's also preferred if you have your users and your groups already set up in Azure Active Directory, but that's also something that's optional. So for central accounts will be needed because that's where the identities will be synchronized into. The other thing that we'll be doing is we'll be creating a virtual network in Azure. And what we'll be doing, as you can see from this diagram, is that the virtual network will be hosting two subnets. One of the subnets will be hosting the Azure Active Directory Domain Services Managed Service, um, which will essentially be two domain controllers that will be managed for you by Microsoft, deployed into that subnet. You don't need to do any management with that. And you see what that looks like after we are through with this. But also we have another subnet where we'll deploy a Windows Server virtual machine into that. That's where we're going to be installing our Sophos Central AD connector later at some point. It's important to note that the subnets that you are creating must be able to accommodate a minimum of 3 IP addresses. So that's very important to note. Then, as I mentioned earlier, we will be deploying an Azure virtual machine into the virtual network that will be hosting the Sophos Central AD connector later. Then we'll configure DNS on our virtual network to ensure that this machine can join the Azure AD DS domain, or the managed Azure AD DS domain, I should say. And then finally, we'll configure the virtual machine, and we're going to install the Sophos Central Active Directory connector on it. So let's get right into what we'll be doing today. So let's get into the very first step of creating this virtual network. So what I have here is I have my Azure portal already logged into that. So what I will be doing is I'll go on the virtual networks and I'll go ahead and add a new virtual network. I won't be doing anything fancy here, be giving them basic names. So let's go for Azure VNet. The address space, I will make that a /16 of 10.10.0.0/16. I'll select my subscription that I want to associate this resource to. I'll create a new resource group. I'll call that Azure-RG for resource group. I'll select the location that the virtual network will be created in. I'll leave that set to West Europe. I'll configure a default subnet because in Azure you have to create a subnet, at least one subnet when you have a virtual network. So I'll call that management subnet. And this is the subnet that I'll be deploying the virtual machine into. I'll give that an address range of 10.10.1.0/24. I'll leave every other setting set to their default settings, and I'll go ahead and click on create. That should not take a very long time to create. And once that's completed, I'll move on to the next step of deploying a virtual machine into that management subnet of the virtual network. So essentially, all I've just done, just to give you a graphical illustration of that, is I've simply created this VNet. Let's go back. I've simply created this VNet with a single subnet in it. So the management VM is not there yet. So actually, if I wanted to, I could take this out for now. So let's get back to the portal and see where we are. So that deployment is completed. So what I'll do now is I'll move to step number 2, which is I'll deploy an Azure virtual machine into the virtual network. So in this case, what I'll do is I'll go on the create a resource. I'll select Windows Server 2016 VM, and I'll go ahead and give it a name. I'll call it Sophos Central, or I hyphenate that, and I'll call that VM01. I'll leave that set to the same region. Obviously, that's going to be in the same resource group as my virtual network. It does not need to be, but to make things simple for me, I'll leave that set to Windows Server 2016 Data Center, and I'll leave that set to a very small size. So that's just one vCPU and 3.5 gigs of RAM. So actually, in order to help my performance for today, I can change that to maybe a DS2 V3. That'll do. But in production, you do not need this. It's nothing stopping you from selecting just one CPU, 3.5 gigs RAM. That's sufficient because this VM won't be doing every processing. It will simply be the one responsible for synchronizing your identities from the managed Azure AD DS to Sophos Central. I'll give it a username following the rules of Azure, knowing that I cannot use admin or root as the username. I'll configure a complex password and I'll confirm my password. So for the public inbound port, I'll go ahead and allow only HowDP because I want to be able to connect to this machine after deployment. And if I have an existing Windows license, which I do via my MSDN, I could go ahead and select yes to confirm that I have a Windows license, and that's going to save you some money on the cost of running the resource. So I'll go ahead and click next. I'll leave this as the default. I'll go ahead to the networking tab. So networking tab, I'll ensure that that is set to the network that I created earlier, and that's set to the subnet that I created earlier. It's going to create a public IP address. I'll leave that set to the default, and I'll go ahead and select next. On the management, I'll leave that set to the default again, and I'll go ahead and click next, and I'll click next again. And if you want to add tags, you can go ahead and add the tags. But for now, I'll just go ahead and review and create my virtual machine. Validation passed successfully, which is great. And I'll go ahead and click on create. So at the end of this deployment, what we'll have is we'll have a virtual machine now deployed in the subnet. So this aspect of the Sophos Central AD connector is not yet there, but what we'll have is we'll have a virtual machine deployed in our subnet. We have a virtual network ready. So moving on to the next step, actually there is a step that I have missed out here. So I'll just go ahead and add that right here. So I'll call the step deploy Azure AD DS, which is the Azure Active Directory Domain Services. And I'll probably call that, maybe call that D1. And I'll just move things around a bit. Go like that, and let's move this one over here. Okay, so the next step of what I'll do is I'm going to deploy Azure Active Directory Domain Services, and that will involve the service. And as part of that, I'll be creating a new subnet in our existing VNet, and that subnet will be hosting the managed domain controllers. So that's what I'm going to be doing next. So let's get into that. And let's make this a bit smaller, and let's move that over there. Okay, so going back to the Azure portal, while the VM is still deploying, I'm going to click on create a resource, and I'm going to type in Azure AD domain services, and you can see that over here. So this is a managed service. It supports protocols like LDAP. It supports NTLM and Kerberos authentication. What it's going to do, I'm not going to go into details into what Azure AD DS does, but it's essentially manage domain controllers. You don't have to get yourself involved with managing this. As you create your identities in Azure AD, they will get synchronized automatically without you having to do any management to Azure AD domain services. And then you can use normal protocols that you're used to. So protocols like LDAP and LDAP security, you can use those protocols to access and use those identities. So I'll go ahead and click create on this. Now with my Azure AD environment, I already added a custom domain name of azurehangout.co.uk. It's asking me what's the DNS domain name that I want to use. I'll leave that set to azurehangout.co.uk, and I'll specify the resource group that I want to create these resources, this resource in. I'll put that to Azure-RG that I created earlier. Make sure I have the right subscription selected and the right location. So this location has to be in the same location where we have our VNet. I'll go ahead and click OK to that. It says I'm going to select the virtual network where it's going to deploy this managed service. I'm going to go ahead and select my virtual network. And under the subnet, it's telling me here what I told you earlier, that I'm going to need the subnet to have at least 3 available IP addresses, which is fine because I'm just going to use a /24 to make things easier. I don't have an existing subnet I'm going to use, so I'm going to ask you to create one. So I'll go ahead and add a subnet. I'll call this Azure AD DS subnet, and I'll give it a range of 10.10.2.0/24. I'll leave it without a network security group, even though I'm going to leave it without a network security group. And during deployment, a network security group will be created to only allow the required access automatically by Azure, by Microsoft. So I'll leave the root or route table set to none, and I'll just go ahead and click OK on this. So you can see here it says a network security group will be automatically created and associated with that subnet, and it's going to be configured according to the guidelines that you can read over here. I'll go ahead and click OK to that. And now it's taking me to this. So what this is talking about is that in Azure Active Directory, which is where we create and manage our identities, there will be a new group that will be created called AAD DC administrators. Any user or admin user that you want to have some level of administrative privilege to manage Azure Active Directory domain services, you will need to have them to be a member of that group. So for myself, I already have at least a member or 2 members actually in that group. But if you want to, you could click on that group and go ahead and add some members that will have some administrative privileges. It's very important to note that the privileges are very limited because again, this is a managed service. I'll go ahead and click OK to that. The next thing that I'll do is that it's talking about synchronizing your identities from Azure AD to Azure AD domain services. If we wanted to, we could go ahead and scope it and select certain groups that will be synchronized. And that could be something that's useful if you want, if you wanted to. You could go ahead and say, so for example, I have this group called IT, marketing, sales. I could go ahead and say, only synchronize members of these groups into that. But for now, again, it's just something for you to know that you can do. For now, I'll just leave that set to all for now. And I'll go ahead and click OK. So now it's going to ask me to review my configuration options. And if I'm satisfied with what I've selected, I'll go ahead and click on OK, and the deployment is going to start. Now, this deployment will take roughly about 40 minutes. In my own experience, it takes about 33, 35 minutes, but it could take up to 40 minutes, depending on how busy the Azure region is at the time when you're doing the deployment. So go ahead and get whatever you need to get done because this is going to take a while to complete. For myself, I'm going to go ahead and pause the recording here, and I'm going to resume the recording once the deployment is completed. So I'll see you in a few minutes time. Hello and welcome back. So the deployment of the Azure Active Directory domain services service just completed. So that took roughly around 38 minutes to complete. But one thing that I wanted to show you, because I'll pause the recording again shortly, is that even though the deployment is completed, there are still other processes that will take place. So for example, you can see here deployment all successful and completed. If I go over here and I click on Azure AD domain services, or if you don't have it on the left pane here, you can always go under all services and search for Azure AD domain services, and you have the option come up. And if you click on that option, and then you get your domain services here. If you click on that, one of the things that you notice is it's still showing as deploying here, even though the deployment says it's completed. That's very simple. That's because after the deployment is completed, it begins the synchronization. So it begins the synchronization of identities from Azure AD to the managed domain controllers for Azure AD DS. So the Azure AD domain services is the service that's responsible for doing that synchronization. So that's going to take quite a few minutes to complete also. So you just have to be patient and let all of that complete. Once it's completed, you will see the service show up has been held here. So what I'll do is I'll go ahead and pause the recording again, and then once everything is fully completed, I'll go ahead and resume the recording, and then we can go through the rest of the process, which will involve us configuring DNS on our virtual network and configuring the Azure VM, and then finally installing the Sophos Central AD connector. So I'll see you shortly. Hello and welcome back. So as you can see, the Azure AD domain services has finished deployment, and also the synchronization has finished. So it's showing as being healthy over here. You can also confirm by clicking on the view health button, and it takes you under the health section, and you can see the initial synchronization. It's showing as not complete here, but it's showing as running over here. So what I will advise you is give this a lot of time to complete. So from experience, this could take hours to complete. So I'm literally saying give it about 1.5 to 2 hours to complete. I know that's a long time. I'm not sure if Microsoft are working on reducing that, but that would be a great thing. So once that's completed, the next thing that you want to do is actually mentioned on the overview here, which is you need to update DNS settings for your virtual network. And that's the next step on our diagram also. So as you can see here, the next thing we need to do is we need to configure DNS on our virtual network. And what that means is we've deployed our virtual machine into this management subnet. We need to configure its DNS to point to the IP addresses of the Azure AD DS service. So let's go ahead and do that. First thing that we need to do is we need to obtain the IP address of the Azure AD DS service. Actually, it shows that to us right here on the overview screen. But we could also go on the properties, and on the properties, it also displays the IP addresses there, 10.10.2.4 and 10.10.2.5. So what I'll do is I'll click on the virtual networks over here. I'll select my virtual network, and what I'll do is I'll click on the subnet. And on the subnet, I'll click on the DNS servers, and I'll set it to use a custom DNS server. So I'll specify 10.10.2.4 and 10.10.2.5, and I'll click on save. So that will save that configuration. The other thing to mention is that having saved this configuration, I'll need to restart my virtual machine so that it can pick up this configuration change. So I'll go ahead and do that now. So I'll go back to the Azure portal. I'll click on virtual machines. I'll select my virtual machine there, and I'll click on restart. So this will take a while to restart. But while doing that, let me talk you through the next steps that I'll be doing. So what we'll do now is we need to configure our Azure VM. So the next steps that I'll be doing will be focused solely on the Azure virtual machine here. So what I'll be doing over here is, first of all, I'll join this machine to the domain that we just created. So that's a very straightforward step. One thing that we'll need to be able to do that, if I go back to the Azure portal, is, and I go under Azure Active Directory, is we'll need a user in Active Directory that we can use to join the computer to the domain. So it could literally be any user in Azure Active Directory. So if you're not familiar, you could always go to the Azure user portal and change the IP address. And actually, you could actually click on a user here. If you want to reset the password of the user, go to the Azure user portal, which I'll put the link in the description below, and then you can set the password of the user to whatever you want. Give it roughly about 20 minutes to 30 minutes. So whenever you make password changes in Azure AD, give it about 20 to 30 minutes to synchronize to Azure AD DS. But that happens automatically. You don't need to manage any domain. From what you can see, actually, if I go under virtual machines, you can see that we have no access to the online virtual machine that's running behind the Azure AD DS service. That's because it's not managed by us. So we don't have to worry ourselves about managing any services like that. And that's the beauty of this, is that it's all managed. We don't have to concern ourselves with doing any management. All we need to do is carry on the way we've been doing, with managing our identities in Azure AD, and Azure AD DS will ensure that that synchronization occurs. So my machine should have restarted by now. So what I'll do is I'll click on the machine here. I'll get my public IP address. I'll bring up remote desktop connection and I'll connect to that machine. So I'm going to go ahead and click on more choices. I'll put in my username that I configured during deployment, which is Azure admin, and I'll put in my complex password. And I'll click OK to that. It comes up with this message. I'll say don't ask me again and go ahead and click yes. So now I am connected to the virtual machine. And just to verify that it's picked up the DNS configuration of 10.10.2.4 and 10.10.2.5, I'll go ahead and confirm that very quickly using the command line. So I'll click on the search windows button over here. I'll go ahead and click no to that. So, okay, here we go. I'll go ahead and type cmd for command, bring up the command prompt, and I'll type ip config/all, and I should see the DNS server configuration already applied. So also, just to verify, I can do ns lookup azurehangout.co.uk, and I press enter to that, and you can see that that's resolved successfully. So that's great. So I'll click on the local server over here, and I'll click on the work group, and I'll click on the change, and I'll go ahead and specify my domain there. If I click OK to that, it prompts me for the username and password. Now I'll put in an Azure AD username and password, but I'll put it in the UPN format. So for example, I have a user called Brenda. I'll put in Brenda at azurehangout.co.uk, and I'll put in the password there. If I go ahead and click OK, hopefully that's successful. And as you can see now, it says welcome to the azurehangout.co.uk domain. I'll click OK to that and OK to restart, and restart now to restart the computer. So when the computer comes back up, the next thing that I'll do is I'll go ahead and download the Sophos Central AD connector. I'll log into the Sophos Central console. I'll download the Sophos Central AD connector, and I'll go ahead and install that. So actually, I'll just go ahead and add the steps of what I'm doing here. So hi over there, I'll say join the VM to the Azure AD DS domain, which was what we did. And then E2, which will be download and install the Sophos Central AD connector. So those are the two sub steps under this. In the meantime, what I'll also do is I'll go back to this and I'll go log into my Sophos Central portal. and now put in my password. And that signs me into the portal. I'll put a link below if you want to sign up for the Sophos Central free trial account. If you want to play around with this, I'll put the link to sign up for the free trial below in the description. So if I go on the people, you notice that apart from the user that's set up this free trial, I have no other users here. And I'll be synchronizing users straight from Azure AD using Azure AD DS into Sophos Central. So my machine should have restarted by now, so I'll go ahead and connect back to it. And I'll put in my password. And I'll go ahead and click yes to connect. So actually, I did make a mistake there. So what I'll do is I'll go ahead and sign out, because what I should have done is I should have signed in with a domain user. So that's what I'll go ahead and do. So I'll go ahead and sign in again, but I'll go ahead and show options and change the username to one of my Azure AD users. So I'll use David at Azure hangout.co.uk. So I'll go ahead and connect using that. It's going to ask me for the password, and I'll put in the password for the user David, which is an Azure AD user. And I'll go ahead. Oh, too many login attempts. Oh, okay, let's just use another user that I know. So I'll go ahead and use Brenda, and I'll go ahead and click connect, and I'll put in the password for Brenda. Oh, okay. So I'm not sure what the issue is with David account. Let's try that again. David at azurehangout.co.uk. Put in my password. The user account has been locked because there were too many logon attempts. So yeah, if I go ahead and try to, so I'm in a bit of, there's a bit of an issue here, because if I go back to Azure AD and I go ahead and select my user, so because the only user that I've currently added as a member of the admin group for Azure AD Domain Services is this David user, and what it's showing me is that the account is currently locked out. So if I do reset the password, then I have to wait for 20 to 30 minutes before that synchronizes. And also, if I go ahead and add Brenda, for example, into that group, if I go ahead and add Brenda into the AAD DC administrators group, which will have remote logon access, and I go ahead and select that, that's also going to take a while before that synchronizes to Azure AD DS. But you know what? I'll need to do what I need to do. So I'll just go ahead and select my user account, and I'll go ahead and reset the password. And I'll copy the temporary password. So what I'll show you now is the option if you want to reset an Azure AD password that I'm sure that many of you are already familiar with. So I'll go ahead and get the link and I'll show that to you. So the link that you want to do, if you want to reset that, is you go to myapps.microsoft.com. So let's go ahead and bring up a different browser in private mode. I'll put that in, put in David at Azure hangout.co.uk, and I'll go ahead and copy my temporary password and paste that in there and click sign in. It's going to prompt me to change the password. I'll go ahead and change the password. And I'll go ahead and click sign in. That updates my password. As you can see, I can now sign in. I'm not sure, how I think that's going to take a while before that synchronizes. I'll go ahead and try it one more time. If that does not work, I'll just go ahead and try to use log in as a local user. So if I go ahead and click on connect, I go ahead and put in my password. I get the, yeah, it's still changing. Update your password. So it's still in the state of when I reset the password. I'll go ahead and just log in as Azure admin for now. I think that should still work. So I'll go ahead and click connect on that, and I'll put in the password. At the end of the day, I still need to provide the credentials to contact the domain. So I'll just go ahead and do that. I may just need to add the credentials manually myself. So if I go on the local server here, it should show my machine is joined to our domain from what you can see. I'll go ahead and set the IE and non-security configuration. I'll set that to off. And I will bring up the browser. I'll log into Sophos Central and download the connector. Central.sophos.com. I'll put in my username and the password. So I have this now. The next thing that I'll do is I'll go ahead and click on the global settings. And on the global settings, I have AD sync settings and status. So if I go ahead and click on that, I should have the connector here. I can go ahead and click on download. I'll just go ahead and run it. So I'll go ahead and install this connector. So I'll launch the utility and I'll click on finish. So that should launch the utility here. So I'll go ahead and click next, ask me for my Sophos Central credentials. I'll go ahead and put that in. I'll go ahead and put in my password, which is not stored in plain text. So that's stored, it says, yeah, in an encrypted form. I'll go ahead and click next. For the AD credentials, it's detected I'm joined into the domain. Now, for this test, I'll go ahead and disable the use of LDAP over SSL. Obviously, that's recommended to use that because then you have the security when this connector is reading the identities from Azure AD. I'll go ahead and disable that for now. I'll show you what you need to do if you want to use that. You need to go to your Azure portal, to Azure AD domain services, and you first of all need to go on the secure held up and you need to enable this. Now, when you click on enable, you have to import the certificates that you need. Well, for now, just to make things simple, I'll go ahead and disable that for now. But that's what you need to do if you want to use secure held up. So that's the reason why for now, I'll go ahead and disable secure held up, which means I'll need to change the port to just plain LDAP, which is 389. I'll put in my Active Directory username and password in this format. So I'll go ahead and put in my format of Azure Hangouts /, and I'll use Brenda, and I'll put in Brenda's password, and I'll go ahead and click next. It's going to detect my domain. I'll go ahead and click next. I'm not going to set any filters, which you can define filters if you wanted to. I'll go ahead and click next. I can specify a synchronization schedule over here. I'll select twice a day, even though I won't be following that because I'll go ahead and trigger a manual synchronization after this. I click on finish. And if I should go back to this, it's going to check for updates. And what I'll do is I'll click on preview and sync. So it's going to go ahead and reach out to the Azure AD DS service. Is going to read my users or my user informations and including my group information so I can select which groups to add, which groups not to add. So actually, like a lot of these groups, I don't need to add. So let's say I only want to add a few groups. I can go ahead again and filter just for the groups and that I want to add. But to not make the video go longer than it's already gone, I'll just go ahead and say approve changes and continue. and the synchronization begins. It's going to say sending data to Sophos Central for reconciliation. Set sync finish without errors, which is nice because now if I go back on the people in Sophos Central, I should see my Azure AD users over here. So that's great because now what we've been able to do is we've been able to synchronize our Azure AD identities into Sophos Central using Azure AD DS. So that's great. I hope this video has been very informative for you. If you have any questions regarding any of the process or any of the steps regarding what I've done, feel free to drop that comment in the description below. I'll be happy to read and answer those. But for now, that leads me to the end of this video. Thanks very much for watching and see you in my next recording. Bye for now.